Happy Thanksgiving. How's everybody doing today? It's kind of chill here today. That turkey is just kind of mellowing out here. How was your Thanksgiving? Did you get all the good food to eat? Yes. Did you drive? Did you get stuck in traffic? No, they came to see you, I see, because your friends are here. Isn't that wonderful? Did you get all the Black Friday specials? Did you just camp out in line? No. Well, at our house, we have a Thanksgiving tradition, and it goes something like this. And Eileen has been doing this for a very long time, so I'm finally getting used to it. After the food is prepared and you're waiting hours and hours and you're just ravenously hungry and you think you're going to be starving to death, we sit around the table and we all sit down and the food is there, it's steaming, it's hot, and you can smell it and you're ready to dive in. And Eileen says, before we get started, it is our tradition at our household that we all have to say a word of thanks around the table before we dive in. Now, I know she does this because we are so hungry that we are going to make it brief. Because if we all sat down and said everything that we were thankful for, we truly would starve to death. So we each go around and say a word of thanks. So since some of you were unable to make it to the Gemmell household, we're going to do it really quick right now. Find a partner and find a partner and ask them what they're thankful for. Ready, set, go. Okay, now switch. Ask your partner what they did for Thanksgiving, if you haven't spoken yet. Thanksgiving. Dining. Feasting. I had no idea how much food was in the Bible until Pastor Gary Patterson began to take us through the Bible. Did you stunned like I am how food is a center theme running all the way through? Remember, he talked about the walk to Emmaus, how the disciples didn't really figure out what Jesus was doing, and if it was Jesus, until they sat down and prayed. And at that point, they realized who it was. He told us about Adam and Eve, how that power of that first meal changed the course of humanity. And then, of course, the children of Israel out in the wilderness, what is it that they had to eat? What is it? Okay. And Jesus fed the 5,000. The Lord's Supper, how things were turned around and changed, that powerful meal that Adam and Eve had to the powerful meal that Jesus gave us. And he, by the way, will not partake again until he returns. Remember the story of the breakfast at Galilee, where Jesus and his disciples ate by that fire by the seaside. And then, of course, the Revelation banquet, when all the world will come together, all the universe will come together and celebrate victory over the end of time, eating together with Jesus. Glorious. As I began to look at the Bible, there are a lot of studies about food in the Bible. And we overlooked one little story, and I think it's an important story. It's a story in the Bible about feasting. So I'd like to invite you, just in your minds with me, go to that story right now. Family is gathered around the feast table. The turkey has been basted and brined and baked. The potatoes are mashed. The string bean casserole is ready to go with the dried onion rings on the top. The cranberry jello is jiggling on the plate. It's all ready to go. It's a big gathering. 7 brothers and their wives have gathered, 3 sisters and their husbands and the kids and the grandkids. It's a huge celebration. And everybody is there except for there's one couple that's missing. Mother and father haven't made it. Somehow they had a scheduling issue. And so as they're all together feasting, in the background you begin to hear this low rumbling sound, almost as though a train is coming, except this was thousands of years before trains were invented. The roaring gets louder and louder. And then all of a sudden the lightning flashes, the thunder roars, the wind blows, and the house, the load-bearing pillars, walls of the house collapse. And the house buries everybody in the house. Everyone is killed except for one server. The story is recorded in Job chapter 1, verses 18 and 19. Yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept from the desert and struck the four corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead. And I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. Now, this is not the first blow that Job has received. This is the fourth blow. Other messengers had come and told him that his oxen have been destroyed. The donkeys are gone. The camels are gone. All of his wealth is erased in one day. He has zero net assets. And this is not the end yet. There's two more blows to come as he loses his health, and then he loses the love of his wife. As we read this story, it reminds me of the question of what do we do when bad things happen to good people? It's one thing to be thankful to God for the blessings that He's given us, and God has truly blessed us. But what is the flip side? What happens in the midst of suffering? In the midst of injustice? Because the reality check today is not only do we have blessings, but we also live with suffering. We also live with injustice. As you walked in the room today, some of you came with thanksgiving to God, but still on your heart you came with suffering. Some of you are bearing suffering right now. Some of you have had injustice in your life. You've been accused of something that you were innocent of. You lost your job. You didn't get the promotion that you deserved. You have a challenge in your health. Maybe you have cancer in your body right now as we speak. Your marriage is blown out. Your finances are upside down. And you're suffering. And you have injustice in your life. How do we dine in the midst of disaster? How do you reconcile these two things? Because the reality is that what I just describes almost everyone in this room, and there's only two kinds of people: those that have suffered and those who are going to suffer. It's a part of the human existence in this world at this time, in this place. So what do we do with that? A couple weeks ago, I was talking to a member of New Hope Church who is suffering, has been given this disease, and she's fighting it, and she's asking herself the question of why? Why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong? Today, I'd like to take a look at this question. And we're going to go to the book of Job. Now, the book of Job is an interesting book. It's a long book, and it's one of these books that if you just have feeling too happy, you need to go to the book of Job. If you had an overdose of Prozac, this is the place to take care of it. I've been in the book of Job for 2 months now, and I tell you, it goes on and on and on. You know, we read the first chapter and a couple chapters in between, and we read the last chapter. But if you really want to get the full dose of Job, read it all. Meditate on every word, and that'll take care of any happiness that you have in your life. It'll just deplete it right there. It's a fascinating book, the book of Job. But I'd like to go there right now because as we take a look at the book of Job, it really deals with this question of why. Why is it that bad things happen to good people? And we would like to go and look at that question from 3 different viewpoints today, 3 different worldviews, 3 different planets, if you will. And the first planet we'd like to go to is the planet Zophar. Have you been to planet Zophar? Planet Zophar. Zophar, remember, is one of these 3 people that comes to Job to comfort him. And if you're familiar with the book of Job, you remember the story. 3 of these so-called friends come to comfort Job. And the first part of the story is kind of interesting. They sit down with him for a week. A week without saying a word. And that's probably the best thing that they did. It goes downhill from there as we read their speeches. I just picked at random one of his speeches from Zophar, one of his friends, and he's basically seeking to answer the question of why suffering. Job, why are you suffering? And here's the text. Let's go to Job, and it goes something like this. I just picked one out of Job chapter 20, verses 4 through 8. It says, "Surely you know how it has been from old, ever since mankind was placed on the earth, that the mirth of the wicked is brief, the joy of the godless lasts but a moment. Though the pride of the godless person reaches to the heavens and his head touches the clouds, he will perish forever, like his own dung. Those who have seen him will say, 'Where is he?' Like a dream he flies away, no more to be found, banished like a vision of the night." That's interesting poetry, isn't it? But if you read behind it, what is Zophar really saying? Well, I've kind of taken the liberty to write the text. The next slide has it in blue, and it says what's really going on here. Let's go on to the next slide here. "Surely, Job," this is what Zophar is really saying. "Surely, Job, you know how it has been from old, ever since mankind was placed on the earth, that the mirth of wicked such as you, Job, is brief. The joy of the godless such as you, Job, lasts but a moment." And he continues and says, "Though your pride, Job, reaches to the heavens, and your head, Job, touches the clouds, you will perish forever like your own dung. Those who have seen you will say, 'Where is Job?' Like a dream you fly away, no more to be found, banished like a vision of the night." Are you feeling comforted? That is the world according to Zophar. Now, what is this world according to Zophar? The world according to Zophar basically says this, and that is that, did I lose my microphone? There it is. Basically, it says, Job, you are deserving what you got because you are a wicked person and God is punishing you. Because if you were a righteous person, God would be blessing you. That's the world according to Zophar. Do you live in the world according to Zophar? Do you know anybody that lives in that world? Have you lived in that world of Zophar? You know, I kind of grew up, and there were some Zopharish people in my life. Are there Zopharish people in your life? I grew up, and there's a couple people in my religion said something like this. If I can remember, they said, well, if you drink, you're going to get cirrhosis of the liver, and God is going to punish you for your drinking. And God is going to punish you. You might get in a traffic accident. And these people said, you know, if you smoke, God is going to punish you, and you're going to get lung cancer, or you're going to get emphysema, you're going to get something else. And these people said, if you go into a movie theater, God tells you that The guardian angels are going to have to stay outside, so you're going to have to suffer the consequences. In the world where I grew up, in my religion, someone said to me, if you wade into water over your knees on the Sabbath day, God will punish you. Well, that was kind of the world that I grew up in, and I don't know what religious background that you came from, but I would like to suggest that almost every world religion has this component in there somewhere. Doesn't matter whether you're Islamic, it doesn't matter whether you're Jewish, it doesn't matter whether you're Christian, whether you're pagan, whatever it is, there's this background picture that there's these gods up in heaven that are waiting to smite you for doing something bad. That's the world of Zophar. And how comforting is that to you? How comforting was it to Job? Let's find out. Job chapter 21, verse 34. Here is Job's response. He says, how can you console me with your nonsense? Nothing is left of your answers but falsehood. It was not comforting, number one. And number two, it did not make sense. Why? Because Job was an innocent man. Let's go back to the beginning, Job chapter 1, verse 8. Here's the background story. If you pull the lens back from the world of Zophar and see the bigger point of view, then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There's no one on earth like him. He's blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. So you see, Job was an innocent man, and the dilemma is, if he's innocent, why is he suffering? Why is he being punished? Something's not making sense here. And that's the question that we have asked as human beings throughout all eternity. What's wrong with this picture? Why is it that if the gods are punishing us, if we're wicked, why is it that some wicked people are never punished? And you can name some names right now of people that you know or you've seen in the media that are terribly wicked and they seem to be living the high life. And the reverse, those of us know Jobs in our lives. There's some Jobs here right now amongst us. And these are people that do honor God and live righteous lives, and yet they are struck with suffering and injustice in their life. And the question is, why? It doesn't make sense. Archibald MacLeish, as he translated the poem of Job into kind of a modern context, he asked the heart of the question that's raised by Job. He says, if God is God, he is not good. If God is good, he is not God. So basically what he's saying, if God is all-powerful, he can't be all-loving. And if he is all-loving, he can't be all-powerful. And these are the questions that were lurking behind the minds of society during the Enlightenment. And as time progressed, more and more people began to emigrate away from the world of Zophar, from planet Zophar, and began to move to a new planet, a planet which I shall proclaim today to be planet Darwin. Let's go to planet Darwin for a moment. Planet Darwin is very different because on planet Darwin, there is no supernatural. Everything is natural. There is no God, there is no karma, there is no fate, there is no blame, there is no thanks, there is no praise. None of that, because on planet Darwin, it is like a gigantic three-dimensional billiard table where the only thing that happens is the balls colliding one upon the other, and it's a matter of cause and effect and of probability and of randomness. That's the world of Darwin. Now, the world of Darwin is a fascinating world. It explains things a little bit differently, cause and effect. If you smoke, there's a good probability that if you smoke long enough, you are going to get lung cancer or emphysema. Of course, it's only a high probability. There's always George Burns. That's the world of Darwin, cause and effect. If you are texting while driving, there is a chance that you're going to have an accident. Law of probability, okay? If you have an affair and you happen to be the director of the CIA, there's a high likelihood that you may be asked to resign. Laws of probability. If you go kite surfing long enough, there's a good chance you're going to break your leg. Laws of probability. In this world, there is no answer to the word why. It is simply random. And in fact, the only thing you can do is increase your probability, decrease the odds or increase the odds. In fact, I don't know if there's any mathematicians here today that work actuarial tables for insurance companies. Your life depends on this because here's how it works. You bet on us and our probability factor. And you sign us up for life insurance. And we pay out life insurance. And you're betting on the fact that we are going to live longer than we expect to live. And of course, you hedge your bets with annuities because you're betting on the fact that we are going to live shorter than we expect to live. It's all a matter of probability. It's all a matter of odds. How do you like living in planet Darwin? That's where much of the world lives today. Now, in planet Darwin, there's only one sure thing. There's a 100% chance that you will die sooner or later. It's only a matter of probability and time. Do you find comfort in that? There is some truth to it, isn't there? But does it give you comfort? Does it give comfort to the person that had their house on the beach that got washed away? Said, well, the odds are your house is going to be gone soon, so you played the odds, you lost. Good luck with that. That's the world of Darwin. There's another world that I'd like to introduce you to right now, the third worldview, and that's the worldview of Job, the hero in this story. The worldview of Job is a little bit different. Let's go back to the very beginning of this book, and it pulls back, and it shows a totally different way of understanding the question of why. Let's go back to Job chapter 1. And Job chapter 2, verses 3 through 7. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There's no one on earth like him. He's a blameless and upright man, a man who fears God and shuns evil, and he still maintains his integrity. Though you incited me against him to ruin him without reason, skin for skin, Satan replied. A man will give all he has for his own life. But now, stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself with it as he sat amongst the ashes. What is the world of Job like? The world of Job is a war zone. There's a fight going on between God and Satan. There's a fight going on between good and evil, and there are casualties in that war. Whose fault was it? Where does the blame go? Does the blame go to Job? No. Does the blame go to God? Satan would like for it to be. Do you remember in the verse here it says, Satan is urging God to strike Job, but it's not God who's doing the striking. We find it is Satan. Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores. But there's something else in this worldview that's different from the first two. The first one blames God or blames the person that's suffering. The second worldview blames no one. But this third worldview, the worldview of Job, has something that the other two don't have, and that is hope. Hope that things will not always be the way that they are right now. The war is going on, but the war has already been won. There's just some mop-up work that's going on right now to finish things out, and very soon it will all be over. We have a taste of it in the ending of the book of Job. It's marvelous. In the last chapter, Job chapter 42, verse 12, the Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former part. He had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 oxen, and 1,000 donkeys, and 7 sons and 3 daughters. That's a sneak preview of what's going to happen. There is hope that the future is going to look different than the present. And there's a down deposit on it right there with the book of Job. Hope in the future. Well, what does that take us now? How do we live in the present? How do we live with the suffering that we have right now? How do we live with the injustice in the moment? That's the question. It's on all of our hearts. It's a question that all of us have answered and continue to answer. And I'd like to share with you right now, I have not suffered much in my life. I have been blessed beyond belief. If I were to sit down and tell you the blessings that God has poured upon me, you got a couple weeks? Because that's how long it would take. Many of us had blessings, but some of us had some suffering too. And I had just a little itsy-bitsy tiny window of an opportunity to reflect on the book of Job a couple months ago on September 11. It was our grand vacation time, and I was out kite surfing with my daughter, Rika, and we were doing a 10-mile downwinder from Avon to Hatteras on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Rika's getting pretty good at kite surfing by now. And so we were out there about 5 miles downwind, and she says, "Dad, teach me to jump." Now, kite surfing is kind of fun and adrenaline-filled, and it's great. It's like wakeboarding behind a helicopter or capturing a meteor, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to call it. But to jump, that just amps it up about 10,000%. And so Rika says, "Dad, teach me how to jump." And so I said, "Watch this." So I took the kite and sent it up heavenward. And when you do that, if the kite goes up, it tends to pull you up with it. And so I went up heavenward and watched the sea depart below me as I went higher and higher and having a good time. Now, when you're kiting, though, and when you're jumping, it's like you're flying an airplane. You can be up there flying for a little while until your kite catches up with the wind speed, and then you want to land it very carefully. Otherwise, you drop like a rock. So I was up there, and I was having too much fun showing off to my daughter, Rika, and I stayed up too long, and I dropped like a rock. And as I was dropping, my front foot came out of the foot strap of the board, and so the front nose of the board went in crooked. And so when I landed in the water, the board went one way and my foot went the other way. It was like a 360-degree twist like that. And as I hit the water explosively, it sounded like popcorn going off in a microwave oven. And I sat there in the water stunned for a moment. And I reached down to my leg because I was sure it was broken, but there was no bone sticking out. So I was so happy. So got back on the board. Leg didn't quite feel right, but did the rest of the 5 miles back to the shore. That night, my brother-in-law, who's an orthopedic surgeon, he inspected the legs. You're fine. You just have a sprained ankle. So a little duct tape, take care of it. So the next day, tried to kite surf some more and bicycle and jog on the beach, but the leg didn't work that well, and it had this funny poking sensation in it. So after the vacation, 10 days later, we came back to the doctor here in town who was unrelated to me, and he actually had an x-ray machine, Good thing to have if you're an orthopedic surgeon. And he said, you know what? Let's see, is it tibia? Fibula is broken in half. And I said, that explains the poking sensation. So, $14,000 later, and a titanium plate and 12 matching screws that I'm still learning to love were put in my body, and I was brand new again. And I want to share with you, just in that little tiny brief moment, some thoughts on what it's like to live in this casualty war zone that we're living in right now. So here's Dave's top 10. I had to jot these down before they went away because it was only a momentary experience for me. Here's Dave's top 10. Number 10, medical care is expensive. I didn't know that. You know that, all right? I see some people here from Admidst Risk Management. I should not have mentioned this story because now in the future they're going to say, I will not insure you for kite surfing. Medical care is expensive, but it's good to live in a time that we do now. If I lived 150 years ago, I would still be kind of hobbling around, even right now. Dave's top 10. Number 9, descending staircases on crutches should be considered an extreme sport. Let me tell you, that was more exciting going downstairs on crutches than kite surfing ever was, and more dangerous too. I mean, just one step from falling all the time. Not that enjoyable either. Number 8, it takes longer to do simple tasks when you have a broken leg. For the first time in my life, when we were getting ready to go, Eileen was ready before I was. It was amazing. It was amazing. Number 7, pain tends to stay on your mind. You know, it's there, always, 24/7. Those of you that suffer from chronic pain, wow, I had no idea what your life was like. It's amazing how pain is always there. But something about pain is a good thing because it reminds you that this is not the way things are supposed to be. Something's broken, it needs fixing. And that was probably what got me to go to the doctor in the first place, is the pain. And the pain also reminded me, hey, I've got to get this thing fixed. I am going to be faithful with physical therapy. I'm going to do whatever it takes because I don't like this pain. I want it to go away. I want things to be fixed. Pain is many times a good thing. And through this experience, we can learn something about injustice and about suffering. And even though the devil meant for us to suffer, and he meant it for ill, we can take things that are negative and redeem them for the glory of God. And there is life lessons in suffering that are actually beneficial, even though they were meant to be evil in the first place. Pain is one of those things. When we experience pain, we know that we need to do something about it. Love the line from the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. Love that movie. Remember the line? Everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. If you're in pain, remember, this is not the end. We're not there yet because everything's going to be okay in the end. Number 6. I had to fight hard from becoming self-centered. More self-centered than I am already. I'm a pretty self-centered guy. More self-centered because pain has a way of doing that to you because it masks out everybody else and everybody else's need, and all you're thinking about is your own problems and your own suffering and your own challenges. And that's just the way it is. That's the way it was for Job. Read the book of Job sometime if you're feeling too happy. You have verse after verse after chapter where Job is thinking about nothing else but his own pain and his own suffering. Everything else is masked out. Something to be anxious about, I guess, when it comes to suffering. That just happens. We tend to be more self-centered. But the flip side of it is, number 5. People, even strangers, share their experience of suffering with you. That's amazing. Here at New Hope, I know every single broken bone that you've ever had. because you have told me about it. You've told me about how you got hit by a car, how you fell off a horse, how you stumbled and fell as you hit a rock. Every single broken bone I know about. Somehow we got this thing going on. We got this connection. We've got something in common. I know more about you than I want to know. People, even strangers, share their experiences. I mean, even out in the, going to restaurants, going out to eat, whatever, in shopping centers, people walk up to you, total strangers, says, hey, what's going on here? Well, I had that, they tell their story. Number 4, when you suffer, you notice others who are suffering. I never noticed people with crutches before. I never noticed people in wheelchairs before. I mean, not really. I mean, yeah, they were there, but might open a door for someone, but it's not like I really knew what was going on. But as I'm on crutches, I knew what was going on, and I began to have something called empathy. And empathy, you got this two sides. One side is all you can think about is yourself, but the other side is it opens up a door to be able to see others who are suffering. This thing called empathy. And that's a good thing. Because as we begin to have empathy and as we begin to care for and comfort others who are in pain and suffering, guess what happens to our own suffering? It begins to subside. Simply taking our mind off ourselves and beginning to help others. There's a poem that was written by a young lady who had just been diagnosed with cancer. And I think there's a good model here as it reflects the story of Job and the way we care for one another. Let's go to her poem right now on the next slide. It says, when I was diagnosed with cancer, my first friend came and expressed his shock by saying, I can't believe that you have cancer. I always thought you were so active and healthy. He left, and I felt alienated and somehow very different. My second friend came and brought information about different treatments being used for cancer. He said, whatever you do, don't take chemotherapy. It's a poison. He left, and I felt scared and confused. My third friend came and tried to answer my whys with the statement, perhaps God is disciplining you for some sin in your life. Planet Zophar, right? He left, and I felt guilty. My fourth friend came and told me, if your faith is just great enough, God will heal you. He left, and I felt my faith must be inadequate. My fifth friend came and told me to remember that all things work together for good. He left, and I felt angry. My sixth friend never came at all. I felt sad and alone. My seventh friend came and held my hand and said, I care. I'm here. I want to help you through this. He left, and I felt loved. It's amazing what can happen with empathy. Dave's Top 10, number 3. Although very difficult for me, because I'm a very proud person, I learned to accept and appreciate the help of others. That's tough. You know, when someone tries to open the door for you, oh, I can do it myself. Someone tries to cook breakfast for you, oh, okay. Got to get used to it. One of the downsides of being able to walk again is having to cook my own breakfast. Huh? Suddenly, though, I got an insight into the fact that I am utterly dependent upon God for every breath I breathe, for every heartbeat. My life itself is held in God's hands. Dave's Top 10, number 2. It is not until you lose something or someone that you really sense its value. Having only one leg that worked, I began to miss my other leg really, really quick. That's what suffering does. That's what injustice does. It tells us things aren't right. And we need to change things. Now, the interesting thing is, hope does not have to be just for the future. We don't have to wait for the kingdom of God somewhere far off in the future. The kingdom of God is now. And we can begin to bring the kingdom of God into this earth right now. And when we see suffering, we can begin to change suffering. When we see injustice, we can work for justice. When we see violence, we can work to end violence. When we see these things that are going wrong, that are broken in this world, we can begin to change things in anticipation for the kingdom of God that is coming very, very soon. Dave's top 10, number 1. A thankful heart is the best medicine. What we can learn from Job, in fact, let's go to the key verse out of the entire book, Job chapter 1, verse 18. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. My little window on suffering is just about closed. Doc says I'll be out kite surfing in another couple weeks. Can't wait. And yet this little tiny window that I've had opens up for me a giant doorway to see the suffering and the injustice that all of us are going through. That you are going through. That you're going through right now. We can thank God for the blessings that He's given us, and that's good. But something even greater than that is having a thankful heart to God in everything. And it's that thankful heart that can get us through this dark tunnel. It's that hope that keeps us alive, that things are changing, things are going to get better. Pretty soon, we're going to be sitting down at that banquet table with Jesus Christ. It's all going to be gone. The sin, the suffering, the tragedy, the violence, the injustice, it's all going to be made right again. And we will sit down with Jesus forever and ever and ever. And it's that hope that can keep us going. This morning, I invite you to participate with me and with Paul. May these words be on our hearts today. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18. Give thanks in all circumstances. Amen.